As a fan of simulated sailing and sailing in real life, I somehow stumbled across 𝗦𝘂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 Dev team, 𝗥𝗲𝗃 Studio, about 2 years ago via his YouTube channel. I chimed in occasionally as they worked openly on Hydrofoil generation, but I didn't actually realise until very recently that 𝗦𝘂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 was one of the original founders of 𝗂𝘂𝗯 and 𝗦𝘂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂, so he definitely has simulation pedigree. I first discovered Hydrofoil racing in about 2019 whilst watching the Round the World 𝗦𝘂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 series. I was immediately hooked as the addition of those foils stabilised and considerably increased the top speed of those sailing yachts. Since then I've progressed on to watching the fastest of all hydrofoil racing, 𝐃𝐨𝐧𝐚𝐭𝐢𝐒, who fly the ever-evolving F50 catamarans. Whilst hydrofoiling has been around since before World War I, it has only been since 2019 onwards that hydrofoil racing has really grown in popularity. Hydrofoil Generation then has styled one of their 2 existing boats on the 𝐃𝐨𝐺P F50s. Having never sailed in either of the boats available, I've got to say that they both feel incredibly authentic, based on what I have observed via my television. So 2 years ago, I recall Stefano saying it was going to be released soon, and 2 short years later, here we are with a wonderfully accomplished early access release. Hydrofoil Generation is available on Steam right now for £17.99. And just to clarify, you don't have to be a sailing or hydrofoil nut in order to enjoy playing Hydrofoil Generation, but it sure does help, as this is a true simulation, and as such there's a lot to master if you want to sail these boats on manual settings. Despite the lack of an FPS limiter, my i9 and RTX 3080 are delivering well over 200 FPS, and that's despite running on an NVIDIA surround triple screen setup of 7680 by 1440p configuration. And whilst that's also recording in either 4K or 2K 60 FPS, the performance is very good indeed. The boats and their crew are excellently modelled by 𝗥𝗂𝗃 and are sharp, vivid and accurate, as are the localisations with authentic coastlines of Den Haag, Hong Kong and Bermuda. Whilst there are elements of decent audio all over the game, for me right now the audio in essence is not good enough to be truly immersive. For me there are way too many missing audio clips to give it that lived-in immersive sensation that I ultimately crave. Having said that, there are some decent audio chunks as well, like the crashing back down into the water when you let the foils get too high, and the crew shouting during a manoeuvre. The physics seem to be very accurate and very realistic, with wind, wave and current all adding to your list of things to manage. The online multiplayer experience seems to be solid, there's no lag whatsoever that I have noticed, and I've had some really excellent close races as a result. The built-in replay system is robust and solid, although more control over cameras would be good, the ability to zoom in and out and rotate as I see fit, for example. When using the keyboard and mouse, the controls are responsive and accurate, and they become even better when you're using controller inputs. At the moment I'm using an old Thrustmaster wheel without force feedback and an X56 throttle. It's been tricky trying to get it balanced in a way that works for the game, but now that I've got something that does work, it's absolutely superb. To edit keybinds then, I needed to create a custom profile, and at the moment you're unable to delete additional user controller profiles, so do not create too many. To get my Xbox controller to bind correctly, I first had to turn off my default Xbox profile in Steam. Possibly this is something that was added by the developers to help streamline the experience. What happened was that it modified my Xbox controller to send keyboard and mouse inputs to the game instead of Xbox controller inputs. So the right thumbstick, for example, would control the mouse, and the A button and the X button were sending A and D keyboard inputs instead. Despite some time playing with the setups and trying a few different things out, I found that the inputs were just too limited right now to really get the most out of the Xbox on its own. So I pretty quickly moved over to using my wheel and throttle, which I explained a moment ago, and I must say that they work considerably better and are way more immersive. Especially seeing as dagger boards in the F50s are controlled with foot pedals anyway. Right now there are no AI to race against, so instead you will need to race against people online. At the moment there are 5 dedicated servers running 24/7, and if you host your own server you can turn collisions on, although for those 5 there are no collisions. I think perhaps they should consider in the future running one official server with maximum realism settings in operation. Right now though, we have people racing in either full auto everything or full manual everything or somewhere in between, and obviously that's giving an advantage to one person or another. It's still early days though, and the multiplayer servers are super stable, so from that perspective they are working really well. I would love, however, to see the ability for 2 players to crew a single boat. Not only would that offload some of the workload, which is quite intense when you're doing 100% manual sailing, but it would definitely allow separation of responsibilities, and I think it would make for some even more exciting racing moments. So there are a few missing or lacking features. Hydrofoil Generation is in early access, and as such some of these missing or lacking features are going to come later on down the line. In my humble opinion, right now the tutorial is too limited. It lacks clarity and it lacks polish. For beginners especially, I think it's just going to be confusing, especially when its demands are so stringently enforced. You will likely be left to work some of the stuff out on your own, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed. An FPS limiter might help to reduce overall power uses and possibly ensure better stability online, not that there's any real issue with that at the moment anyway. A single player mode with AI opponents, a career or a campaign, or perhaps custom tournaments, I think a lot of people would like to see that, myself included, and if for no other reason, it's a good way to practice. Head tracking would also be excellent in this game. Now, I've not had a chance to try it, unfortunately, and I suspect that it might actually be possible already. If not officially supported, then I think you could probably jimmy it somehow. But I'll have to check on that in the coming weeks and months. There's no confirmation or explanation of rules and regulations, which I've yet seen implemented anywhere, which makes it even more difficult for beginners. And server setup options allow collisions, and hopefully some rule settings could be set there too. Again, I have not yet managed to set up my own server. In 𝐶LGP, rules are conveyed via light indicators, which are located on the rear of the F50 boats. I'm not sure if that's something that's being considered, but certainly that could help in the future to make sure that everybody knows who has the right of way and who has the line. Because right now, sometimes it's a little bit difficult, especially without head tracking or something similar, to really identify who should have the inside line. Now, I've mentioned already multi-crew boats, ideally 2 people or 3 people who could be working together to achieve a single boat cohesion. That would be absolutely fantastic. Obviously, that's how it's done in the real world, and I'd like to see that replicated here. Also, at the moment, when there are collisions or crashes, there's no ragdoll effects. All the characters stay in their position and just sort of carry on as if nothing had happened. There's also no animation for your character when you switch sides. It's an immediate thing. And I find that quite odd, because if you watch from outside of the boat, your character, your modelled character, definitely does run across. And I just think it would be cool to have the option, at least, to see that in first-person view. So what does the future hold for Hydrofoil Generation? I'd say this could easily evolve to become the esports of 𝐶LGP. I definitely think it's good enough, and I think if they approached 𝐶LGP would be interested in doing a deal with them and discussing something along the lines of official support. I really do think it's good enough for that to happen. There is a possibility, however, that Hydrofoil Generation could incorporate their own sort of unquote esports online racing community, something that's already pre-existing and is certainly being discussed. There's no official announcement of anything just yet, but certainly something like that is likely to appear here. So, in conclusion, if you're a 𝐶LGP or foiling fan, then you've got to jump aboard this one. I think you'll enjoy it, and if you're on the fence, then go and check out some of my races and gameplay footage, and keep an eye out for updates and new features in the coming weeks and months. This is such a great game, and if you can really get into it, if you can understand how it works and understand sailing and sort of get yourself involved in a race or two, you'll see just how intense and exciting it can be. It's brilliant fun. I absolutely love it. 100% recommended by me.